Today's British news is dominated by Conservative MPs' support for a new inquiry into the sexual abuse of girls and young women in Oldham. The government has decided against a request from Oldham Council for a new national inquiry into failings in the cases of locally groomed girls and women. In the government's view, a local investigation would be more productive. However, senior Tories disagree. Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, took to X and declared that the crimes had been legalized and actively covered up to prevent disorder. He was also keen to make wider points about Britain's multicultural society. Jenrick claimed that authorities were concerned that a predominance of men of British Pakistani origin among the offenders would harm community relations. This appalling affair is the final nail in the coffin for Liberals, who still cling to the argument that Britain is an integration success story, Jenrick wrote. The scandal started with the onset of mass migration. Importing hundreds of thousands of people from alien cultures, who possess medieval attitudes towards women, brought us here. The Muslim Council of Britain was horrified at the comments and accused Jenrick of weaponizing the horrors suffered by young girls to push a hateful agenda. Robert Jenrick is pouring petrol on social divisions with rhetoric that grows more inflammatory by the day, said a spokesman. His dangerous language about alien cultures isn't just divisive. It's matches in a tinderbox. In an interview with Sky News, Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, declined to endorse Jenrick's comments. But Tory party leader, Kemi Badenoch, was less circumspect. She leapt to Jenrick's defense, insisting on her colleagues' right to free speech. This nonsense of attacking anyone with a different viewpoint has to stop, said Badenoch. We must be free to have tough conversations, no matter how difficult that may be to hear. We need moral courage, not silencing of debate through personal attacks, Badenoch added. This is a classic example of why politicians stop being honest with the public. The Conservative Party is under new leadership, and that means confronting difficult truths. Liz Truss was another top Tory active on X, looking to call foul on the government's decision. Labour's response to decades-long failure on rape gangs targeting young white girls by mostly Pakistani heritage men is unbelievable, immoral and unconscionable, wrote the former Prime Minister on X. The government has denied the claims made by Conservatives. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper reminded opposition MPs that some 7 years ago, Labour had backed an inquiry into child sexual abuse, initiated by the then Conservative government. In April 2023, the then Prime Minister Rishi Sunak had committed his government to a clampdown on grooming gangs. Cooper said that the inquiry engaged with more than 7,000 victims and survivors, processed 2 million pages of evidence, and published 61 reports and publications. 2 reports by Alexis J. and Louise Casey in Rotherham found that 1,400 children were sexually exploited, raped by multiple perpetrators, trafficked across other towns, abducted, beaten and threatened with guns. These reports identified a decade ago a failure to confront Pakistani heritage gangs and a widespread perception that they should downplay the ethnic dimensions for fear of being seen to be racist. When those reports came out, that approach was condemned across the board by both government and opposition. So, according to the governments, the authorities did not play softball with the grooming gangs, in deference to multiculturalism. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer underlined this point, denying that sensitivities over community relations guided the actions of authorities, rather than a duty of care to the abused girls and women. The Prime Minister also feared that the Tories had crossed a line with their attacks on Home Office Minister Jess Phillips. "I'm very concerned about where the Tory party is going on this," Starmer said. "I think only a few months ago, it would have been unthinkable for things to be said about Jess Phillips that were said recently. This isn't fair, because it's put a member of Parliament at risk. That's not good. That's why I say a line's been crossed. If you're not prepared to stand up as a Tory MP and denounce what's been said about Jess Phillips, who's now had threats made to her, then you need to seriously consider why you're in politics in the first place." Liz Truss was the most prominent Conservative to train her guns on Phillips. Truss accused the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for safeguarding and violence against women and girls, of excusing masked Islamist thugs. Truss then asked rhetorically of the minister, which side is she on? Elon Musk, the ex-proprietor, went much further. He called Phillips a rape genocide apologist and said she should be jailed,